I heard a young girl calling.
It's a song known by many. You more than likely know the tune, and you definitely know the melody. If you've been to or watched an Irish rugby or football match, or a Celtic match even, you've definitely heard of this song. The Fields of Athenry. For me, I first became aware of this song when I was like one of many bored kids on a bus going on a school tour. I knew the melody, but I didn't know the words, so I was literally just singing gibberish that closely matched what others were singing. I know I wasn't the only one, and I know you all do it too to some extent. Back then, we didn't know why the song was written, what it was about. We only cared about getting on our school tour and enjoying having no homework for the day. But as I got older and more into Irish music, especially the history of the songs, this song really stands out to me as one of the most important songs for Ireland. The story is simple, but it resonates with so many people. In short, the song is about the famine, loss and survival. Back then, during the famine, or the Great Hunger if you'd prefer, people had nothing to eat. There wasn't much money either, and people were forced into poverty due to many factors, which I'm not going to get into in this video, but I want you to imagine what it would be like if you suddenly were forced into such a position. Try and imagine it. Your house, your food, your starving kids not fully understanding what's going on. You want to do the best that you can for your family, although you can't. No matter what, you can't do anything. The only way you can get food to feed your family without having money is to beg, borrow, scavenge or steal. For those who were caught stealing, they were locked up and, in many cases, deported. Are you still imagining what it would be like to be in such a position? Now, I want you to add on to that stress being separated from your family, and either you or your kids being deported to Australia. It's not very fun, is it? This was the life millions of Irish were forced into back then. This is why the population was cut in half over the years of the Great Hunger. If you're watching this video and you have an ounce of Irish ancestry in you, you are essentially a survivor of this time. Your great-great-grandparents were sent away or left Ireland to build a better life. To put this into perspective, let's take the United States for example. Ireland's population before the Great Hunger was about 8.2 million. 2 million people emigrated mostly to the US in the first few years. Now, let's fast forward to today. According to a 2020 census, nearly 10% of Americans claim Irish roots. That's 32 million people. That's considerably more than the population of Ireland today, which still hasn't recovered to pre-famine times. Fields of Athenry was written in 1979 by Pete St. John. He was born in Inchicore, Dublin in 1932. He was trained as an electrician and had emigrated to Canada before returning to Ireland in the 1970s. When he returned home, he was struck by how much the country had changed and how much had been forgotten. From here, he began writing songs that connected to Ireland's past, though out of all of his songs, none would resonate more deeply than The Fields of Athenry. The song is set during the Great Famine of the 1840s. The Fields of Athenry tells the story of a man named Michael, who lives near the small town of Athenry in County Galway. His wife Mary and their baby are starving. With no other options, Michael steals corn to try to save them. He's caught, and for that he's sentenced to transportation to Botany Bay, a penal colony in Australia over 10,000 miles away. That means he won't be jailed in Ireland. He'll be put in a ship with other convicts, sent across the world, and likely never seen again, and he'll likely never see his family again. Michael is a fictional character, but stories like this actually happened many times. We don't immediately connect with this fact, as it's unimaginable in today's age that such a serious punishment be given to someone stealing food to feed their family, which, if you think about it, isn't exactly their fault. They're starving in the first place. At the beginning of the video, I was asking you to empathize with the people who lived through the famine back then. I want you to think about that again. Imagine being sent away from your starving family after trying to help them, never to be seen again. During the famine years, millions of Irish people faced hunger and desperation. When the potato crop failed, it wiped out the staple food that most of the poor relied on. But other crops like oats, wheat and barley were still being harvested in Ireland and exported. They were grown on land owned by landlords and guarded by British policy. So while the countryside starved, ships full of food left Irish ports every day. People like Michael broke into storehouses or raided shipments out of sheer desperation. Some stole food from landlords. Others took part in protests or riots. Many were arrested and thousands were sentenced to transportation, labelled criminals for acts of desperation. Many were punished under laws that left little room for the realities of the famine. Transportation wasn't just punishment. It was permanent separation. Families were torn apart. Convict ships took men and sometimes women to Australia, where they were forced to work under brutal conditions. Those left behind, like Mary in the song, were often destitute and alone. Sometimes the only contact came from letters sent years later, if at all. At the time, sentences like this were common. Britain used transportation as a way to deal with overcrowded prisons and to populate its colonies. Between 1791 and 1853, over 30,000 Irish people were sent to Australia this way, many for petty crimes or acts of survival. And it wasn't just the physical punishment. There was deep shame and stigma attached. Families of convicts were often shunned. Communities saw them as tainted, even when everyone knew the crime was survival. This is the world the Fields of Athenry is set in. A world where a man could be exiled for trying to feed his child, where empty fields sat alongside loaded ships, where the Crown's law saw mercy as weakness. So when the song says Michael stole Trevelyan's corn, try not to think of it as a line about theft. It's more about the injustice. Trevelyan was the British official in charge of famine relief, and in Irish memory he's seen as the face of cold, bureaucratic cruelty. He delayed aid, blamed the Irish for their suffering, and said the famine was God's judgment, and to quote, "The judgment of God sent to teach the Irish a lesson." Michael then becomes a stand-in, not just for one man, but for thousands. He represents the husbands, sons, and fathers who were sent away, and the women and children who stayed behind, watching ships sail out of view, wondering if they'd ever see their loved ones again. The song takes a national tragedy and tells it through one family. That's what gives it power. It's not a list of historical facts. It's the emotional truth of what happened to the Irish people during the famine, boiled down to a single heartbreaking goodbye. Pete St. John later explained that he invented the characters of Michael, his wife Mary, and their child to represent the ordinary families caught in the devastation of the famine. He wasn't telling the story of a specific man, but rather capturing what happened to many. These were people pushed into impossible choices, choosing between obeying the law and trying to keep their families alive. Some took food from stores, fields or shipments. Some joined protests or walked for miles hoping to receive aid. For those caught, the consequences could be severe. Arrests were common and many were sentenced to long prison terms or deportation. Families were separated. Some never reunited. Children were often left behind with extended family or neighbours, or placed in overcrowded workhouses. St. John chose to set the story in Athenry, a quiet town in East Galway, not far from the coast. It's surrounded by farmland, and in normal times, those fields would have produced more than enough food. But during the famine, the landscape became symbolic. Green fields that couldn't feed the people who lived beside them. That contrast left a lasting impression, and the name Athenry became the emotional heart of the song. The Fields of Athenry was first recorded in 1979 by Irish folk singer Danny Doyle. His version resonated with audiences almost immediately, and it reached the top 10 in the Irish charts. It was a powerful, stripped-back performance that introduced the song to a new generation of listeners. Not long after, other artists began to take it on. In 1982, folk group Barleycorn released their version, which also charted well, but it was Paddy Reilly's rendition, released the same year, that truly took the song to another level. Reilly's version peaked at number 4, but more significantly, it stayed in the Irish charts for an extraordinary 72 weeks. That kind of longevity is rare for any song, and it helped solidify the Fields of Athenry as more than just a folk ballad. It became part of the national soundtrack of Ireland. Moving on from that, the song didn't stay confined to records or radio. It began to take on a second life, not in concert halls or pubs, but in stadiums. In the late 1980s, fans of the Galway hurling team were among the first to start singing the Fields of Athenry from the stands. Its slow, powerful melody and emotional lyrics made it perfect for large crowds. It wasn't a chant, it was a song that carried weight, and it spread very quickly. By the time the Republic of Ireland soccer team were qualified for the 1990 World Cup, the song was already being sung by fans in green jerseys across the country. It became a kind of unofficial anthem, a way for supporters to connect not just with the team, but with a deeper sense of shared history. Then came Celtic Football Club in Glasgow. Founded in the 1880s to support Irish immigrants in Scotland, Celtic had always had strong links to the Irish community. By the early 1990s, the Fields of Athenry had been adopted by their fans too. It became a fixture at Celtic Park, sung before games, after goals, and even during long pauses in play. It wasn't about rivalry or results, it was about identity. One of the most moving moments in the song's history came in 1991, during a testimonial match for long-serving Celtic goalkeeper Paddy. Pete St. John was invited to attend the match and speak to the crowd. He used the moment to thank the people of Glasgow for welcoming Irish famine emigrants generations before. Then, standing before a crowd of 60,000, he began to sing the Fields of Athenry. As he sang, the entire stadium joined in. The sound of tens of thousands of voices echoing the chorus overwhelmed St. John. He would later describe it as one of the most unforgettable and humbling moments of his life. That performance wasn't just emotional, it was a turning point for the song. From then on, the song wasn't just something people would listen to, it became something that people would participate in. It had moved from radio hit to cultural anthem, something that belonged to the people. For me, I follow the rugby a good bit, and it always gives me pins and needles whenever the crowd sings the Fields of Athenry. Maybe we're in a tough spot, maybe we need some support, or we're miles ahead and the crowd is just having the crack. Either way, it always spurs the team on. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to hear that as one of the rugby lads playing on the field, either for or against Ireland. Supportive, intimidating, or both. You'll hear the Fields of Athenry in places far from Galway as well. It's sung by fans of Munster Rugby, London Irish, and the Irish national rugby team. It echoes in stadiums and arenas, before kick-offs, after final whistles in the moment of triumph, and in moments of defeat. The melody has crossed borders even, and been reimagined in countless forms. Liverpool fans turned it into the Fields of Anfield Road, swapping famine for football, but keeping the emotional core. Cork City supporters even created the Fields of Bishopstown, adding their own local flavour. Even in Indonesia, fans have adapted the tune into their chants, Fields of GBK, proof of how far one song can travel and how deeply it can connect. But no performance is quite remembered like what happened in 2012. If you're a football fan, you'll definitely remember this. When Ireland was playing Spain at the UEFA European Championship, the score was an abysmal 4-0. Ireland's elimination was certain, but instead of heading for the exits, Irish fans began to sing. Tens of thousands joined in. The commentators fell silent. Broadcasters across Europe let the sound take over. Spain's manager called it the most powerful moment of the tournament. Others called it a lesson in what sport and community are really about. There are some football matches where the opposing teams will kick the bejesus out of each other after the match. That's not what sport's about. The Irish fans on that day showed the world what good sportsmanship is about. Pete St. John passed away in 2022 at the age of 90. He once described the Fields of Athenry in simple terms, a ballad about famine. He had written such a simple song in response to feeling that Ireland had forgotten who they were and where they came from. A simple song with a catchy melody, an amazing chorus, and a vivid story. But I personally think he knew, better than anyone else, that it had become something so much more. A story about a man with a small family in a quiet town. But in doing so, he gave voice to millions of people. The song indeed started out as capturing a historical moment and the emotional legacy left by it. Grief, endurance, love and loss, all within this simple song. It became a way to remember, to grieve, to feel connected to the past and to each other, no matter the setting. A song that speaks equally to those who know every detail of Irish history and to those who simply recognise the ache in its chorus. Imagine sitting beside someone at a football match. You have no idea who that person is or where they came from. But then the crowd starts singing this song, and the person beside you does as well. Suddenly you realise that they have the same history and they have the same love for their country and the same respect for all those around. Suddenly that stranger becomes more familiar to you. That's all thanks to this song and Pete St. John. The Fields of Athenry is a memory shared and sung by millions, and it will continue to be sung for generations to come. So that's it for the video. You know what I learned from this is that for my whole life I've known this song. I've heard this song so many times, but I never actually really knew the story behind it. I never really opened my mind a little bit more just to understand what the story was and really empathise, not with Michael and his family, sure, they were fictional, but to the unknown people who suffered a similar situation many years ago. I personally couldn't imagine being away from my family more than a few weeks, never mind being completely separated from them for such a petty crime of stealing food. It really made me aware of how lucky we have it today, though our struggles and stress are in different forms. The emotions and feelings we have today are no different than the people of hundreds of years ago, but it really takes a bit of effort to put yourself in the shoes of those people. I'd love to know your take on this. Has this video given you a different outlook on the song? What did you take away from the video? Please let me know in the comments. So look, I'll wrap things up now. Please hit that like button and subscribe. It would mean an awful lot to me. I'm going to try my best to continue making videos like this, and I really hope you do enjoy watching them as much as I do researching and making them. But look, that's it. That's that. I hope you all have a great day. Thanks a million for watching. All the best. Cheers.